Issues whereupon guys, especially young men, are listening to other men talk about how
Every woman is I assume he says whore. The difference is, a low-value woman wants to whore for many men. She'll post thirst traps on the gram to invite an ocean of simps into her life. She enjoys the dopamine she gets when many men are on her case. Notice, by the way, that inevitably, this will evoke a thought of at least one example of a real woman most guys have known in their life that does have, like, a thirst for attention and post thirst traps. Like, women like this do exist. So, sounds about right in the minds of a lot of young men who read this. Well, a high-value woman wants to whore for only one man. No matter how attractive she is, she places less emphasis on her beauty because she wants to be recognized for something else. Her intelligence, talent, values, character. Every woman falls under either class. No woman can be both.
women are responsible for all the social ills in the world. Often this will also be followed up with a sales pitch on how to be more attractive to women, or some sort of course to make money to gain social status and popularity. It's a tried and true method to prey on the insecurities of people to make them pay you money, and adolescence takes this idea and asks, what if it leads to murder? The creators of the show, Stephen Graham and Jack Thorne, specifically note that they take inspiration from that of Andrew Tate, or people more radical than him, and want to explore what would happen if they were cranked up to 11 and influenced young kids. After all, the murdering of women via self-described incels is a very real issue that has happened in the past, especially via chronically online guys who describe themselves as lonely. So it seems adolescents...
You might be able to argue, in a sense...
Especially via
So, like, there were a lot of things that happened in 2014 that allowed for 2016 to happen. If you know what that means, you know what it means. Obviously, like, the Gamergate stuff was a big part of it, but I think if it was just Gamergate, I don't know if it would have gotten as big as it did. But simultaneously, Elliot Rodger, like, in that same year, did his mass killing and wrote his manifesto, put out his videos or whatever, and everyone was obsessed with Elliot Rodger because he was this relatively good-looking guy. Like, look at him. That's a picture of him there. He's not an ugly guy who, like, lamented the fact he could not get a date. He could not talk to women. He was very socially awkward. And according to him, women were very cruel to him for that fact that he was socially awkward. And for a lot of young guys, they related to Elliot Rodger because a lot of young guys felt like they weren't bad looking, but they still couldn't be successful in dating. And so when they saw this, like, guy who was fairly attractive who still couldn't be successful in dating, who was so radicalized by his lack of success in dating, this idea that women had gotten so picky that he got so lonely he did a mass shooting, like, it really inspired a lot of young men to feel a persecution complex around the fact that they are not romantically successful. It's not that they're mad they're not romantically successful, it's that they feel a persecution complex around it. And stories like this, I think, were part of the multiple things that made the right so successful in those years.
Chronically online guys who describe themselves as lonely. So it seems adolescence is the eventual coalescence of these anxieties. It effectively demonstrates what would happen if the male loneliness epidemic was specifically about men not having female company. The media's obsession with incels smacks of similar discourse surrounding male loneliness. You'll find comments either making fun of incels or empathizing with their issues, just as you would the male loneliness epidemic. And, as stated prior, you'll find grifters and online personalities trying to tell men that the reason they're lonely is because they don't work out enough and people don't respect them, or they're poor and need to learn how to dropship. But of course, none of this advice is particularly helpful for making true friendly connections. This is because the male loneliness epidemic, and tackling it, often becomes conflated with difficulties surrounding romantic interest. There seems to be a weird obsession with the thoughts and feelings of young men, and of course, this continues to pop up again and again on mainstream media. What started off...
You know what's so tragic about it as well? The only solution to the male loneliness epidemic is getting out there and talking to people. But before anyone might feel the urge to do such a thing, even if they are kind of socially anxious, these channels push a nonstop torrent of propaganda centered around scaring men out of doing that. And it's so ubiquitous, and it's so designed to strike at the internal, like, most deeply held fears of men on a social level, that it very effectively scares men out of approaching women or even approaching strangers in general to build relationships and to make friendships. And so a lot of young men are scared by these like conspiracy theories about women wanting to just lie on men's names and get them in trouble, into thinking it's dangerous these days to just approach a woman and start talking friendly, you know? Like it's they're convinced that like women are out there hunting for men to get sent to court, you know? Like there's this very there's an essence around their rhetoric, around programming young men not to do the one thing that will solve their problem, which is going out and talking to people.
As a simple statistic about men not being as likely to have a close friend, eventually veered off into territory about men not having romantic partners. After all, it seems that anything in which men and women are pitted against one another is going to be a topic that draws eyes and ears. And of course, at the heart of the conversation, there's a real fear that incels will lash out against those around them, with the increasing levels of loneliness translating into violence. We've seen the Elliot Rodger references, we've seen reports of incel shooters, and we've now seen adolescents, but the truth is that what started anxiety about the male loneliness epidemic is broader than just men feeling they are owed sex. The male loneliness epidemic has become a beast of many heads. There's fear of what it might mean for the men experiencing it, there's fear men have been failed by society, and there's often fear from men themselves, worried that they're more likely to experience less human connection than others and thus become psychopathic. Despite it often taking the cliched narrative of men versus women, of murderous incels and high-profile influencers like Andrew Tate, it turns out the heart of the loneliness epidemic is due to men and women who are lonely. Not only have there been loneliness ministers employed to tackle the issue from government, but many are less likely to have close friends than a couple of decades ago, as well as say they actually feel more lonely than ever before. That being said, there can certainly be a link between men feeling lonely and not making friends, due to societal pressures to be nonchalant and stoic without cultivating human connection and thus pushing others away. But it's worth noting that the epidemic is not due to trouble in the dating scene as some would have you believe. That's not to say male loneliness hasn't led to issues between genders, and adolescence does cover the disconnect and its consequences well, but the fact is that the epidemic has become something of an exploited issue, pushed by grifters onto those who want to stir up drama and controversy for clicks, instead of working toward encouraging connection between human beings. See you next time on Lessons in Internet Culture.
What a good video. I am very happy to say that was a solid video breaking down this trend. Actually included the data and everything. And you know what? Can I just say, what a peak top comment. I am so lonely. The other Viltrumites are scared of me. Perfect top comment. I simply could not imagine a more perfect quote to be at the very top of the comments. Absolutely phenomenal. That's what I like to see.